are like the splash zone.
All right, for our last talk today, I'm going to introduce a man who needs no introduction.
Awesome. That's the way to start with it. Hello, everyone. Has anyone ever been to a Jason Scott talk before? Oh, sorry, who hasn't? Let's go with that one. All right, good. I guess you're just coming because like the other two talks looked like they were going to just be more bunk. By the way, that UAV talk was awesome. Every talk was like that. That's the talk I like. I have a presentation online called The Presentation, where I talk about why a lot of presentations at cons suck and ways to get around them. And that UAV talk to me is a gold standard because he had the goods, he presented them cleanly, he sounded good, he showed you good stuff, and he finished it. We'll see if that happens here. But I just wanted to say that, 'cause I want that on record somewhere, man, because some people might go like, oh, UAV, what's that, some sort of like voltage regulator? And it's like, no, this guy flew in them. Anyway, name of this talk is called The Splendiferous Story of Archive Team and the Rapidly Disappearing Digital Heritage. It was a talk that I had hoped to give some time ago elsewhere, and just as time has gone on, as I've been involved in this kind of a project, it just happened to coincide with Shmoocon really nicely. And so Shmoocon is the place that will get it. I don't tend to give a talk more than once, so each one's a specially crafted little egg for you. Anyway, so my name is Jason Scott. I run a site called textfiles.com. I've done a lot of work with things like documentaries and giving speeches and so on. And I do all these sort of crazy things. Like I said, historian, archivist, troublemaker, cat owner, dysentery survivor. I survived dysentery just this past January. And that's not a disease you're supposed to get in the 21st century, but I got it, so there you go. The solution is to take antibiotics, which was the secret move that people in the 1800s didn't get. I also want to put a quick little shout out here. Last year, I either left or was made to leave my job. And I had been using my job like a digger wasp uses a victim, which was basically I was doing my own thing a lot. And my job eventually was like, we don't like that you only do your own thing. And I was like, bye, thanks for the money. And I thought, where do I want to go next with this? And I thought, I really enjoy this computer history thing. Wouldn't it be neat if I could do that all the time? And all these projects that I've been working on that have been somewhat delayed, wouldn't it be neat to do that? And so I put out this call, and I came up with this idea, and I put it out on something called Kickstarter, which is a fundraising engine. And it was a really weird thing. It was, hi, here's all these different projects I've worked on. If you give me enough money to live for a bunch of months, I'll do nothing but that. And to my great happiness, 342 people got together, gave me $26,000, and funded me. So I am officially self-employed as a computer historian for hopefully most of 2010. This particular image came from a place that was making fun of me, and that's an actual image of me drinking an energy drink, which they then proceeded to put the pimp hat on. And the contrast, unfortunately, of projectors isn't very good, so you can't actually see the cat that's in the microwave. You're not missing much. The cat's like this. All right? So what I do is I find a lot of computer history and get into it, and I am really into collecting old stuff. This is a U-Haul containing most of the business documents of the early days of the Free Software Foundation, which the person who had it wanted to get rid of. And everyone else had said, well, I want this item, and it would be really nice, and the rest of it you can get rid of. And I was the only one who said, I'll come by with a U-Haul truck. So I came by with a U-Haul truck. And there's all sorts of things in there, like a complete run of Byte magazine and things like that, which is all very cute, but actually it gets really big. And so there's just like complete issues of Usenix and everything else that I've been bagging, tagging, putting together, collecting it, until finally we have the information cube, the textfiles.com information cube, which is actually full of computer history and all sorts of things, and I'll be sorting through that over the course of this next year. So what I'm saying is I really like to do things big, large, and stupid, and including saving important artifacts like eBay the board game, which came out in 2000 and was, as you can tell, a huge hit, because I'm sure you're all remembering your childhoods when you were playing eBay the auction game. As it says, You don't have to go online to bid and buy eBay style. Oh, it's good. Isn't that great? History is goddamn awesome. How awesome is it? Well, one of the things is it really kind of lets you look back on things and see how things have changed. These are what Coke bottles looked like from the early days of their existence all the way to the relatively current days. And there's all sorts of different messages and knowledge and things that we pick up from that. Again, here's a shot of Afghanistan. From the left here, here's the photo shoot that it was from, and that's the exact same place in contemporary history today. Because there's this kind of myth that Afghanistan always sucked as much as it did, and the answer is no, actually it was like this really cool cosmopolitan history, and things like this illustrate for you in seconds what it's like. It also allows you to see some really interesting, awful ideas that people had. Like, for instance, this beautiful cult ad that if people on the right can't see, it's got a big gun, and it says, "Isn't it time you gave yourself a Christmas gift?" Excellent, awesome. Was anything? All right, so of the things that I do, there's these specific items that I have in the past few years kind of really been known for, which is, yes, I do this computer history, but a lot of people do computer history, and a lot of people do other stuff with archiving, and they'll talk about it. But I seem to have this real good talent for saying the absolute worst thing that gets the most attention is the most agitative, some of which you're going to hear today. And it's just one of those things that I do because I'm really passionate about things. And so the troublemaker and the media critic is what's active, but even more importantly, the consistent asshole. I'm a real asshole about certain things, and I've had a lot of great conversations from people that work along the lines of, you are doing good work in a really shitty way. And when people define it that way, there's different variables for amounts of shitty. And what it usually comes down to is people think I'm a little too bombastic, or a little too weird, or a little too out there in statements that I make. And I want to make it clear that I hope that if you find that that's the case when I talk about this particular subject, that you don't come away concentrating too much on the idiot that presented it to you and more on the concept behind it, because I still think that concept is inherently important no matter who got you to first think about it. An example of me causing this was where I started to criticize Wikipedia, and I wrote an article called The Great Failure of Wikipedia in 2004 that got a lot of attention and got me nailed as the Wikipedia critic for a while, which is, by the way, a really terrible position because then people collaborate to fuck with you. And then they edit each other to make sure the fucking with you is even more effective. And they consider me not notable. Similarly, there was one I wrote called Fuck the Cloud, which is a very interesting way to discuss cloud computing. I got the most awesome phone call from the organizer of Cloud Camp that day about why. And I don't want to go too much into why or not liking the cloud. My biggest issue with the cloud can be summarized as a lot of people now use the term until it is meaningless, and it proposes a way of looking at the world in which you are encouraged to keep track of your data in the most lighthearted fashion to the point that you are utterly incapable of understanding where it is, what it's going to, and whatever else. And so there's a lot of people right now who are like, just use the upload and give us your data and figure it out later. So in other words, it may have some actual useful debate there, but fuck the cloud was very interesting because I wrote it that way to see which organizations would reprint it. And actually a pretty good number were willing to link to it at least, to go there seems to be some debate about the cloud at this site. But this was the one that I wanted to talk about today, Datapocalypso. Datapocalypso showed up on my weblog. This is my weblog, ascii.textfiles.com, where I say awful things all day. And this particular entry was about the concept of the fact that backup policy is really kind of weird right now. We all know we should back stuff up. Just like we all know there's a whole variety of things we should do to avoid people getting pregnant. And yet people get pregnant by mistake all the time. And we lose backups all the time, or we turn around and go, oh, you're right, I didn't back up once. And so there's this very weird disconnect. And that we were heading into an era where we were going to be capable of losing more data more quickly that meant stuff. But even more than that there was a current environment about data in which data wasn't as important as anything else. It was considered to be it is considered to be kind of a sideline effect of being online, that you happen to be generating data. Just like if you're watching TV, you're generating time. It's not really important that you're generating time. You're watching TV. Well, if you're working online, you're just generating data, and there's a real sense of that, of like, don't worry about the data. Just do what you do and have fun with it. And what I was specifically very unhappy about was something about AOL Hometown. Now, AOL Hometown was a put your own website on our site that AOL ran. It allowed you to generate a homepage. And so people had, for years, created AOL Hometown homepages, which had all of their information and stories and everything else. And then one day, AOL said, sorry, we're going to shut it down. Bye. And that was the full extent of it. They gave you some arbitrary warning, I think it was 60 days, and said, bye. And then one day, now bear in mind that the way that they notified people was they just sent mail out to the last known email address, most of which bounced, because these things had been around for years. And then when AOL went down, AOL Hometown went down, they just redirected every single page to this one weblog entry saying, hi, we shut down. And the comments on that thing are heartbreaking. There are people who are just like, I couldn't figure out how it worked. What do I do now? People who are like, my husband died and he never gave me the password, and this was my only connection to him in his days in the Air Force. How do I get the pictures back? To which there's no answer. I mean, they never answered the blog. It was a fake blog. A blog implies a person, an actual human being, communicating with you about things in a time-based fashion and then responding to your queries. That's not what that was. This was a press release with a comment section. And so people were miserable. And I said, this is going to be it. This is what's going to happen. This is going to happen over and over again. We're going to lose websites, and people are going to be like, oh, that's a shame. And right now there's this whole variation on that. So, like, for instance, here's one that's, no one should really give a shit about, which is Yahoo had something called Kickstart, which was meant to be your way of putting your resume online, and just one day it disappeared. And they said, yep, why don't you use Yahoo Hot Jobs? That's like using this. And it was out. Now, in that particular case, all you lost was your resume, which in theory you kept another backup of, I hope. But in this case, again, you get this nice, pretty little stock photo of a woman with a light bulb, which I still don't understand. And then go to Yahoo Jobs, go to a thing like we were now that we're gone. We're done. This happens all the time. Places are constantly going down now. Microsoft Encarta died. Woo-hoo! And the other places like Yahoo Briefcase. Now, Yahoo Briefcase is very interesting. It was a place that went down that stored up to 20 megabytes of your personal data. Its purpose was to be a good place to store all that when you didn't have any on your home machine in 1998. And it had been around for 10 years. And one day, they announced, we're closing it in 60 days. Bye. And I was like, you don't have a spare thumb drive? Are you guys out? What are you out? Why are you doing this? What is your problem? For instance, a place like Coghead, which I don't even remember what they're about. They're gone. They've gotten rid of whatever they're doing, and somebody else had bought them out. So they basically are closing down because someone bought them. Trim, well, we'll deal with Trim in a moment, but Encarta was basically like, wow, we really fucked up trying to do an encyclopedia online. We're closed. Encarta was basically Microsoft's encyclopedia product, and guess what? They just couldn't keep it up, so they closed it. You can almost find those motivations, but Briefcase really struck me because there was something about Briefcase closing. Such a small, insignificant site. Such a meaningless little thing. Why would someone kill that? And the only reason I can come up with it killing it is that a middle manager had to show movement within his small fiefdom. And the way he could show it was that he was shutting down a very likely non-financially lucrative site to show that this quarter there had been action within his little fiefdom. I'm really at a loss to come up with any other solution or concept that would cause someone to go like Control-Alt-Delete that. I don't know really any way you would get rid of it. So the solution, I thought, was that someone should found a team of archivists who, when they discovered a site was going down, that they would go in and copy it all and then deal with the problem later. So that became Archive Team. We are going to rescue your shit. And the reason that it says we're going to rescue your shit was because I wanted it very clear that this was not going to be some happy-go-lucky, pleasantly themed, fun little group doing their best to bring together separate groups and so on. I did not want that. I didn't want that feel of the impotent academic saying something's wrong and so I've started an investigation on a thing with this stuff. I wanted it that was like, we're a hostile force that will clean up your mess and make fun of you the whole time you're doing it and be available for you. That's a very specific position. And I realize it's not for everybody, but it was for a group of 50 to 60 people who assembled around me to start doing it. There is a group called the League of Movable Type. The League of Movable Type says fonts suck because they're the last group to really kind of understand their entire business model has gone to crap. But we're going to solve it by just coming up with brand new fonts for free and then putting them out for free with a lot of fanfare and attention so that people will realize, oh, I can have fonts for free that are actually pretty good quality. So they're very hostile, and we kind of like each other. We've talked to each other a lot. We get along. So what's going on here is there are some ideas that when we look back on them, we say this wasn't a very good idea at all. This one's a double vector. It's one of my favorites. It's an asbestos ad that uses the World Trade Center as an example of the usefulness of asbestos. And what it's saying here is like, it's going to take 2 hours to get out of the World Trade Center, and asbestos will help you. All right, great, whatever, Jason, that's really shocking and I'm miserable. There's ideas that we look back now and we say, this is absolutely awful. This is a ad for slaves from 1861 that reads like a used car ad. The position that the guy takes is basically, I have high quality slaves, people who can do seamstresses, they can be field hands, and I am a trustable service. Literally like, trust me. People can tell you, I always give you the high quality slaves. At which point, any person in the contemporary mind space will probably go, at what point do you not think you're trading in actual human beings that deserve as many rights as you have? Like it's one thing when it seems like some kind of uneducated guy is just like, well, I'll do whatever I can to make money, but this guy is trying to appeal to your intellectual sense that he is a good slave trader and you should buy his high quality slaves. This disconnect between the contemporary mind space and that is what I'm getting here. Similarly, DDT is good for me. DDT causes cancer, by the way. Here it is being sprayed, as was often the case, on the beach in summer, directly into the children, to get rid of all those crazy-ass bugs. And in fact, there's even innovation where we have DDT wallpaper that you could put up easily to protect your children against insects by covering their entire nursery in DDT. By the way, anyone, don't do this. Okay, Magnolia. So in this contemporary mind space that we live in now, Magnolia went down. What's Magnolia? Magnolia was basically a bookmarking service. You could bookmark sites and share them with others and then comment on them. And one day they went down. But they went down because the organizer said, we're having real trouble with our backups. We're trying to fix it. Help us. Keep track of it. We're going to work on it. We're bringing this thing together. Here we go, Magnolia. And eventually they had to announce, yeah, sorry, totally unable to recover the database. All of your data is gone. There is no chance of it getting back. I'm so sorry. His name is Larry Half. Larry Half is a fuck. Let me explain why Larry Half is a fuck. Larry Half is a fuck because he had been running Magnolia since 2002. It was now 2009. Turned out that they were doing a single MySQL backup to a single database, but it wasn't actually backing up to that database for 5 years. And it was, which means, therefore, they never tested it. They never tested a recovery. A backup is only half of a backup. A recovery is the other half of a backup. Just do it once, please. Didn't do it, okay? This was a community that was 100% user-generated content, okay? In other words, it was, to a mindset that is not contemporary, some of the most precious data you can find online. You know, we are very careful when we take organs out of people. We have a whole thing of getting that organ to where it needs to go for transplant. We have a whole variety of systems. We even have echoes of it in ambulances, the fact that any single person knows that when they hear an ambulance, they should get the fuck out of the way because something important is happening. Enough that we prosecute people who use ambulance noises when they're not supposed to. Like, this is something we all know. But to him, this user data was not important enough to check on backups and not do it for years and yet still benefit financially from it. He put up a podcast in its place where he was interviewed by somebody, a strange situation, where he said, mea culpa, mea culpa. But one of the things he said made me want to invent a more sensitive nutsack to punch him in. What he said was, you have to understand, we started this back in 2002, and people weren't really as people did not consider backups as critical back then, and we didn't have as much knowledge about backups as we do now. And so we were unable at that time. We were focused so much on providing such a great site that we weren't able to back up. But now in today's world, we would know to back up. See, backups, the process of putting information on temporary storage devices that may or may not fail and coming up with contingencies for that failure and preventing data from being lost is an art that we have been doing for well over half of a century. We have been doing it for a long time, okay? So Larry Half is a fuck because he tried to apply for ignorance, but he's also an indicator of contemporary thought about this data. Similarly, there was a place called MetaPlace. MetaPlace was a Second Life wannabe run by Ralph Koster, who had been renowned as a games theoretician, who said, I'm going to create an open space where you can both create games and have environments, and I'm going to put together this thing, and we're going to have a player's Bill of Rights. And it was a lot of stuff that he had been talking about as a theory guy for years. So it went up one year, 2008, and it was around, and people tried it, and some liked it, some didn't, but it allowed you to upload all of your own works, allowed you to generate code, allowed you to do things. So on December 21st, 2009, he announced it was all going away in 9 days. What you're seeing here is his what's going to happen to my world and what's going to happen. Well, this says what's happening to my world. The answer is it's going away. How do I save my art objects? Painfully through a process of screen grabbing them. How do I save my scripts? Through a painful process of copy and paste. So I wrote an entry about them called Metafuckers. Called him out by name, called his community manager out by name, because I was like, you do not deserve to be anyone's community manager anymore. Because even if you think of a community manager as merely the PR mouth for an organization interacting with the human beings, there is, at least in some theory, some amount of ombudsman there that one could argue you might have, that you too would know your community probably doesn't want it in 9 days. Now, it was December 21st, and I said that they were shutting it down over Christmas. And I said, there was no button to say, export to zip. Why? Because contemporary thought says you don't need it. And why did they think 9 days was fine? Because 9 days is what contemporary thought said, who cares? 9 days, 30 days, 60 days, whatever you can do, hero. So just to be clear again, Ralph Koster is a fuck. There's his smiling face. And he was not, I wouldn't say, how do I say it? His response was the kind of gritted teeth, typed with 2 fingers response that I would have hoped, which was, Jason, we don't seem to see eye to eye on this, and I understand that. And I'm sure the fact that I was calling him this terrible thing. What I liked was his community manager said, it's not over Christmas. It's 9 days. To her, it was like 21st, not the 25th. Great, awesome. That's just beautiful. So I want to take one little side thing to mention something about zealotry and causes, okay? What you're hearing from me is that bombastic, gritted mouth sound verse of somebody who's on a cause, who has some sort of zeal for something. And it's one of the most off-putting, boring things you can deal with if it's not something you're interested in. If you're not as pissed off about vegetable farming as somebody else is, or if you don't agree that motorcycles should have more of the road, or you don't like the lack of bike lanes or something else, and this person is just frothing at the mouth about it, I understand. And I've never tried to indicate that it's bad of people to not agree with where I'm going with this and why it suddenly took such an interest in me. When we started up Archive Team, one of the things we said was, let's just be crazy, and we started to put up something called the Death Watch. And we just started going after all these places and saying, this place, they haven't updated any of their data in a year, they're gonna probably die. This group over here, I don't know what you're thinking, they did this. Okay, they just went down, we were gonna put them up. We would take a screen grab of them shutting down because we knew they would delete it, and their parent company would act like that thing never existed. A good example of that, for instance, is Google Catalogs, which there's no record of there ever having been a Google Catalogs. Google's shared meta place thing, which was called Lively. When I've given interviews about what Archive Team is up to, I talk about Google Lively again as one of these contemporary Larry Half is a fuck kind of things, because what happened was Google Lively said, yeah, we're taking this thing down. You have a couple weeks. Please go and take as many screenshots of what you created as you need. And I said that was equivalent to, we are going to burn down your house in 2 weeks, but you can go through all the windows and take as many photographs of your stuff before it goes down. All right? But the thing is this is all acceptable behavior. And why is it all acceptable behavior? Because that's kind of where we've gone with it. It used to be a miracle that we could store data at all. The fact is, and I'm not making this thing up out of my head, there was a study or a demonstration that showed that the way that a hard drive works is like the hard drive head going over the density of data we have now is the equivalent of a 747 able to go Mach 2, stop on a dime, and read what is written on blades of grass. That is where we've gotten. That's a miracle. That is awesome. And it's awesome that we can store so much data. And it was so cool when we had websites in the early 90s, the fact that you could just hook it up, and through a wide variety of machinations and a lot of personal pain, we could set up websites that allowed people to come in and read our data in full color, a concept which was really unto forward. One of the things I say is that some people would put up websites, and they would have the largest audience of anybody in their genetic line, right? You'd have somebody put up a website, and if it got read by 5,000 or 10,000 people, that might be more than anything written by anyone who was ever related to them. It was an unbelievable thing that we did this, that just the way it happened, it was just great. The amount of people that it opened up the world to. And did they make shitty sites? Yes, they did, but it was their first site. What do you do? How's your first written story when you get to put it up? Not so great. It's usually about you in your room, and you win. But you had these locations that came up in the 90s that suddenly were these miraculous things. Well, they've been around for about 20 years. One of them is Yahoo GeoCities, previously known as GeoCities, previously known as GeoPages, previously known as Beverly Hills Internet, which was a big, huge site that had been purchased by Yahoo for the unbelievable number of $3.6 billion in 1999, and was, at the time that it was purchased, the third most browsed site on the internet. It was a really big deal that it was purchased by Yahoo. But Yahoo announced they were closing it. Now, the way they announced it was also unbelievably shitty. Buried in one of their tech support documents was something saying, by the way, we're closing. And a bunch of us started to make noise about, like, dude, they're closing. Why are they closing? And then suddenly, a few months later, they officially put up a thing going, by the way, we're closing. We're going to close in a few months, and we're going to go down, and thank you. You have the option of paying some money and going to our hosted other sites. Otherwise, get out. Now, some people have different opinions when they think of GeoCities, the concept of GeoCities. The cultural reaction mostly seems to be really shitty websites that move a lot, that have background music and suck. That perception then leads to who cares about them? Why not get rid of them? And variations of that methodology to declare some group dirty and below you, and therefore we can do whatever we want to get rid of them, is an unfortunate echo that we've had throughout history. And we're doing it again. And they did it again. They announced they were going to shut down thousands and thousands of websites. Just shut them down and delete them as if they were never there. An archive team said, okay, that's not going to be cool. GeoCities is fucking huge. We had previously saved sites that were maybe a couple hundred megs. We were like, GeoCities has to be huge. So many things hit GeoCities. And we started to do investigations on it. And we found out that there were like Wikipedia had hundreds of thousands of links to GeoCities pages that had information. We found that, Google had so many links going into GeoCities. So many facts depended on being on GeoCities. We found places that were dependent on GeoCities. We just found everything was really dependent on GeoCities. Whether we wanted to admit it or not, GeoCities was like a major part of human knowledge online. And so we started to do it two ways. We have what I call the Earth First Sierra Club method, right? I'm Earth First, I'm the asshole, I blow up minivans. And then there's a couple other guys who wear ties who are like, I don't know what the fuck those Earth First guys are going, but we have some questions. So our We Have Some Questions guy, Steve, went through Yahoo in the front door and just went in and was like, hi, we just wanted to understand some questions about why GeoCities is going down. And one of the things we wanted to know was, how big is it? Because how big is it, and in parentheses, because we're going to dupe it, you fucks. And they wouldn't tell us, but the thing that was interesting was we think they couldn't tell us because they didn't know, based on two interpretations we had. One way was that the way GeoCities had been kind of sucked into the Yahoo universe, they didn't really on their side have any way of really understanding. They couldn't look at an account and say, this is a GeoCities account. So they couldn't do that. But the other one was we think that they ripped away so many engineers. We're pretty sure of this, that by the beginning of 2009, there were no engineers assigned to GeoCities. We're pretty sure that GeoCities had nobody watching it. We know this because it had a bandwidth limiter. And this has to take you back a little bit about GeoCities. GeoCities had a bandwidth limit. Here was the deal. You go to GeoCities, you get a free account. You get 15 megs of space, and then you can have people grab it. But here's the thing. People could only download so much of your site an hour. So if you had a website, and your website was X amount of megs, and three or four people hit it within 1 hour, it would go to a 503 bandwidth limit. And so that's part of what contributed to GeoCities not being considered a top-tier internet service provider into the 21st century, was the fact that they had this limit. That was a problem for us, because we would hit the limit constantly. And that's what was worrying us. We were like, what are we going to do? And then somebody on the, and I'll talk about this now, we didn't talk about it at the time, but we were like, how do we get around that bandwidth limit? What if we tell them we're Google? Surely they don't stop Google from hitting them. So we told it that our user agent was not the Google bot, but we found that it was searching for the word Google in the user agent and would lift the bandwidth restriction. So then we just started raping it. We had a guy, what did I call him? I called him either Plowshare or something. Plow, they all had code names, and there was Plow. And Plow had 100 virtual machines at his business open up a 100 megabit connection to Yahoo and just suck it dry as fast as we possibly could. Now, GeoCities had this interesting neighborhood set up where you could actually, and it would take a while to go into it, but basically they had a really interesting neighborhood set up that got dissolved when Yahoo took over. Yahoo made it so you had a user ID, but eventually you could have things like Silicon Valley / circuit board / a 4-digit number, and that was your place. And you would tell them where you were located. Again, this is like 1994. So this was an experimental way of doing directories. Well, therefore, we just found the name of every neighborhood, every sub-neighborhood, and then just hit all 10,000 URLs. So that took about a week. And that yielded something in the order of 300 gigabytes of data. Now, we figure that the reason that it was like that is because over time, and this is interesting too, they would often offer you upgrades. They could go to 25 megs. You could go to this amount. You could, eventually you could actually go up to a gig, but you paid money. But if you stopped paying money, they would get rid of your account and delete you. If, however, you stayed with the shitball, no services, no frills, and didn't do anything, you would survive to the present day, and that's how we found 15-year-old websites that had been untouched since the dawn of internet time, was because they were cheap asses and didn't pay any money. Everyone who bought access and took up the upgrade and took the upsell got screwed and got deleted over history as they looked away. But we ended up with 300 gig. Well, that didn't solve everything, because we were like, what are we going to do about all those user accounts? So we asked the Google person, the Yahoo person, and the Yahoo person basically said, well, Yahoo has over 55 million users. That's all we can tell you. We were like, can you tell us anything else? They're like, no. At this point, we go to, the good guy goes to archive.org, lets them know about this. Archive.org had stopped saving GeoCities 3 years previously. They just stopped crawling it. And he said, here's a list of 6 million URLs we've picked up through Google. We would just hit Google. We had code that would hit Google and hit it for what I call old terms. Mosaic, transformers, something. It was something with modem, baud, and just go through all these old terms and see what websites it clicked to, and then go through. And this is how we just randomly searching, going through this, and we just ended up with 6 million URLs that we then fed to archive.org, who used it to do their backup because they went to Yahoo, and Yahoo wasn't able to help them much. Very quickly, here's an example of a homepage that we saved, right? Crazy homepage, lots of crazy shit on it, ET. This person puts up lists of what they call experiences, paranormal happenings, where they would say things like, literally, I'm watching this game show and I had a sense of dread. Just a whole variety of things for their last 30 years. Here's a typical one, Rogue Cowboy. Rogue Cowboy is a military couple. He was in the Navy. All this whole thing talking about his history. But then we get to this one. This one is a memory site for a kid named Patrick Joe Mikey, who died in 1983. And it's part of a web ring of angels. And it's all these women who had put up sites commemorating their dead children who had died at some crazy age, up to and including 0. And what you don't really understand until it hits you is, if he died in 1983 and GeoCities was started for the public in general in 1995, that means 12 years after the death of her child, she was still affected by it enough that she wanted the world to remember her son. And that when she saw GeoCities, the one thing she wanted to say was, you need to know about PJ. You need to know how important he was to my life, and here's everything all about him. And she has pages after pages of her experience of having this son for a mere 2 years. He died, he went to the hospital, had an ear infection, but for some reason he had the infection spread and he died, by the way, in case you're wondering. But that's what, basically that's what we have here. This is and it was just wiped out, just gone. No record of it, gone. But storage is fucking cheap. What we found when we hit GeoCities, we hit it as hard as we could for 8 months. We discovered it was 2 terabytes of data. That's about what we found, about 2 terabytes, which can be had for $200 fucking dollars. And Yahoo couldn't do it. Why couldn't they do it? The answer was again, when Carly and others were involved in Yahoo, and then Yahoo had to show under its new management that it was getting better. They found everything that wasn't quite making a profit and killed it. But GeoCities was one of them, and the most obvious. They killed about 20 other services just to show that they're slimming down and they're going back to their core business. But they put up no contingency for the data to go anywhere because contemporarily we have no facility where we consider that a crime or a problem. So archive team got involved. Now, here's my personal pride. I did a bunch of interviews, but I did one that got onto the Time blog about GeoCities going down. And down there was a quote from me. These guys found the way to destroy the most massive amount of history in the shortest amount of time with absolutely no recourse. And I was so happy to have that, because I'm sure some PR guy at Yahoo was like, oh God, how do we fucking... Earlier this year, last year, people got to experience the pain with the T-Mobile Sidekick debacle. Now, I had people, one of the side effects when you're a big, loud asshole pundit is that people leak shit to you and tell you things because they're like, hey, I'm afraid to do this because I want to have job security, but you'll just blare it out to whoever talks about it. What happened with the Yahoo Sidekick, as far as I can determine from people who have told me, was that they basically did a storage array upgrade. And something busted on the storage array. And somebody decided against making they decided against making the cost addition of having a hot spare right there. It's one of those decisions you make. I mean, I did work in sysadmin. I understand. It's like, well, do we want to get the fucking second one up and running on the data center because they were switching data centers? And they didn't. And something scrambled the parity drives, and they lost all their active data. And a lot of people discovered something, which is that T-Mobile Sidekicks depend utterly on that array, to the point that if you reboot them, they lose all their data, because they go and pull it down again, charging you. And all these people, these are people lost in the darkness. They don't know from parity drives. They don't care that it was a EMC box versus anything else. All they know is they lost it. You know, all the guy knows is fuck the Sidekick. Right? He's got a Sidekick. Fuck this thing. I need everyone's phone number. Text me, please. Tell me your numbers. I've lost all my data, all my photos, all my personal material. I love this one. A teenage daughter with hundreds of lost contacts who, yes, is crying, and me, mother who pays money for the honor. All she knows is her daughter was hurt by something she doesn't understand. This is misery. This is something that we shouldn't have happen now. Like, it doesn't make any sense that we do it now. I have some very strong opinions as to what we can do next with it. Oh, by the way, on the good news, it fucked over Perez Hilton. He was very angry, by the way. He was like, fuck you, Sidekick sucks, T-Mobile sucks. He was just so goddamn angry because he felt lost. Now, guarantee, a week later, all the data came back. The reason why was because they pulled it from tape backup, and they lost like 6 days of data. I mean, there was backups were being done, just hot backups weren't being done, but the entire infrastructure. But I only say that because people don't realize that they have turned, that regular human beings, whether they wanted to or not, now have an IT department. They now have an IT department that they've never really dealt with, and when it goes down, they don't know how to reach the IT department. All they know is like everybody else who has ever had an IT department, they know just get some coffee and go outside, go smoke something, because you don't know what the fuck's going on, you'll never will, you're not allowed to know, you wouldn't want to know if you did, you're out there. So it really falls to people who are in the position that some of us are of maintaining data or having data. Now me, I'm out of that game, I'm out of the sysadmin game, I'm in the archiving game. I go and try to find old things. So for me, I'm out of that game. But I think for you, this is a picture of me when I'm 15, because I keep my own history, right? And by the way, that is a telephone, that was a line. this was me posing for my high school yearbook, and I thought, you know what I need to show? I need to show that I stole a payphone, and I need to show that I have a lineman's headset and that it rocks, and that I'm a fan of Roger Waters. Oh, and I stole a highway blinker. Also, 2 highway blinkers. Sorry, I hadn't even noticed that. And right here, another indication, this is the local dialing distance chart from the phone book to tell me which exchanges I could call for a certain rate at certain times of the day. This is kind of something that's kind of lost on today's. The Dustbuster was a whole thing where every picture I posed in the yearbook that year, I had the Dustbuster. So I was on the school newspaper and I'm holding a Dustbuster, and I did a humor magazine, I have a Dustbuster, and so the Dustbuster is there. So the Dustbuster is in every shot. Why? Easy, hold it, have it around, keep it in the locker for when the photos happen. Yeah, so basically I've always been this kind of a weird-ass, jerk asshole, okay, just so you know. Now, where am I going with this? What's up with this? So here's the thing. Right now, if somebody tows your car, which you don't want to have happen, right, you find out that you're in an environment that sucks. The tow, you call up a number, which is probably on the sign. You go to the place. It's awful. You find out right there that you have to pay $110 for a towing fee. The fat, cancerous man in the booth does not care about you and points to you where in the mud lot your car is. You go out to your car and you get in it. You hate the fucking world and you drive away. The transaction was shitty. However, they didn't crush your car. They didn't destroy your car. They didn't lose your car in the system inherently so you could never find your car again. You didn't have to, once you had your car, remove something terrible from it because they'd strapped it on. You know, didn't have 4 of those boots on it or something crazy. You just went and got your car and it sucked, and that's, I'll never do that again. I won't park there again. Well, I feel like that's what we should really be seeing with data at this point. At this point, your site that you had something hosted with goes down. And they go, yeah, your stuff is now safeguarded with datavault.com. And datavault.com has been given, here's your, if you give us your information to DataVault, or you're given this code, you go to DataVault, and for $85, they'll send you a CD-ROM with all your data on it because you didn't keep track of it, and you're pissed, you got raped for it, but your data is safe, and you get it. It's not that hard. A contracting firm that did this would make $1 billion just having this thing there. The data companies, once this becomes something that we are ashamed of, because we're not ashamed of it yet, once we become ashamed of it and we lose data this much, the fact that you can go off to this firm and get this crap and it sucks, but you got your data, is going to be, I hope, the way it ends up. Similarly, we have to start taking this attitude about our data that I call pets or meat, which is like right now, in some places, animals are pets, in some places, animals are meat. And certain kinds of animals are certain things. And they mean certain things, and we treat them different ways, because if they're meat animals, we treat them differently than we're pets. You know, if a pet animal gets sick, you take it to the vet. And if a meat animal gets sick, you kill it and feed it to the other animals. But with our data right now, we're treating a lot of our data like it's meat, even though to most of us, we discover the hard way when it's gone that they were pets. And we miss them, and we miss it. I've got so much stuff from people who have died, and they come, you know, the families come to me and say, oh, thank you for saving this, we didn't know. Or people who had data that was like, it turned out everybody was using this piece of data to find out something. It's like the plate, like one of the things I was looking for was serial line charts to get access to networking charts that turned out to be like the standard ones that everyone learns how to like wire networking and everything, and they'd all been sitting on GeoCities. Now, granted, yes, it also means I'm one of the larger repositories of Harry Potter fan fiction, and I've got an awful lot of stuff about cats. Cats are wonderful and awesome, and we love cats. Gonna end you. What I hope I hope that you've taken away from this is that feeling of like the fact that right now we have no standardization for shutting things down, that it can be 9 days, 2 days, 0 days, 60 days, the fact that we have this opinion of like, oh, it's a shame it went down, as opposed to why did you choose now to shut it down? What is wrong with you? I live in Waltham, Massachusetts, a place where the Charles River used to reflect the next fashion year's colors because people would dump the dye directly into the Charles River to get rid of the waste. And we don't do that anymore because it's really bad. We really don't think it's a good idea. But right now, we are still doing this. We are still deleting things and just doing stuff without any regard for what that is. I'm going to leave you with a joke. This colonist who is visiting Britain on a diplomatic mission is staying with a couple British guys. And he needs to go to the bathroom. And they're like, well, the outhouse is out back. So he goes out to the outhouse and sits down, and then like right on the door is a portrait of George Washington. He's like, And he comes back in again, and these guys are giggling, and they're like, hey, so how'd you like our outhouse? And he's like, oh, I loved your outhouse, and good decoration there, because I can't think of anything that would make a British guy shit faster than seeing the face of George Washington. That was one of Abraham Lincoln's favorite jokes. Okay? The fact that we know this was one of Abraham Lincoln's favorite jokes was because a lot of people who we don't know, who are anonymous, passed around information, wrote it down, shared it for 100 years, and kept it, and it allows us to once again enjoy and laugh as if we were in Abraham Lincoln's presence when he was a traveling lawyer and would tell ribald jokes. And that kind of connection is what we are doing now. When I put up a site called Please Be Patient, We Are Under Construction, what I did was I went through our 2 terabyte collection. By the way, when our GeoCities site, when we announced we'd gotten it all, turned out 2 other groups had been doing it too. So there were 3 copies of GeoCities. And we shared it all among each other, and we all have it. So there's geocities.ws and RioCities, and they all have all the data too. And we shared it all. So a lot of us had it. But I wanted to do something to demonstrate what we were losing. And what this is hundreds and hundreds of under construction pages. Some of them are rotating. It's meant to get rid of all the ones that are exactly the same, and it's interesting because you have ones that look the same, and you realize that people rejiggered the image so that it would take up less K, so they could get that K back on their 15 megabyte limited site. But some people were more than happy to keep going and get more and more complicated. And as we kind of go on, yeah, start getting up to the painted stuff, you start getting up to the slightly CGI. Oh yeah, now we're getting up to like where there's trains and huge construction zones, jackhammers. I wrote a thing that looked for everything with the word construct.gif or construct in the name, and then just went through by hand with the resulting few hundred, deleted the obvious ones. Starts to go a little bit crazy. Hey, it's the Java guy, by the way, if anyone remembers the Java guy, Duke. I don't know what he's doing alone. Leave that man alone. Actually, there's one down here that every time people have seen this, because it's ended up on Dig a few times, because all it says is this page is under construction, right? And people get linked to it. Why is Ralphie eating paste? I don't know, but leave him in there. I couldn't bear to get rid of Ralphie. Oh yeah. And then we start getting up to the mega under constructions where things are just friggin' huge. Koala, Holly Hobby. Good to know Holly Hobby is gonna help your construction. I don't know, could you imagine a 640 by 480 screen that has that as their logo? You are partying, dude. And then, I forgot woman. There we are. Awesome. She got reused a few times. Okay, and then there's this guy. Now, all right, he's interesting, right? Because first of all, he's got the little Christian fish, but he also really likes you. And I went ahead and tracked down the website that it had been pulled from, and it was this very pleasant gay guy who talked about his lifestyle and his happiness, and that he was looking for just the right guy. And he said it was under construction, and he'd hand-constructed this kind of ribald, like he was really looking for a bear, really looking for a nice hairy dude to settle down with. And this was like just part of his thing. And I was so pleased, actually, because he had done almost all the work in 1999, but in 2003, no other edits. 2003, he shows up, writes it, and says, "This page no longer needed, I found just the guy for me." And then left. And that was it. He hadn't touched it in the ensuing 6 years. So it had a happy ending for that guy. But man, does that thing derail threads. And by the way, look at this fucking the Great Wall of under construction. I don't know what that guy... And anyway, so I of course have done other things, and one of the ones that probably gets most people is an unlimited of Netscape Now. And this is one of those things which, again, this is an example of me saving something which I think is important to people, right? I put up a torrent just about a month or two ago where I pulled out 54,000 GeoCities MIDI files and put it up. And people have been like, wow, it's like 30 days, it was like 60 days, someone calculated 60 days of MIDI. And I went ahead and I put up a list of the top 10, like number 2 was like, I've got friends in low places, but it was like a list, and it was like all this stuff that was, and the reason I put this up was, this was me, this is bombastic asshole again, right? This is me saying, look at what you're losing, look at what you let these guys get rid of, look at what they turned around and thought was fine. This tells you the whole story of Netscape, when it was like you had to choose your browser and how did you do it, and the Samizdat way that we would put together people doing it. And by the way, yes, once again, I mean, this is like, bigger and bigger things. I mean, people would put up all these amazing, the browser was only the beginning. These. That one was just down at the bottom. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep that one in. Just because there's something so funny about it that someone was like, you know what? Download the Netscape handgun. Oh, and there's one anti-one, of course, showing Netscape blown up and everything else. So. But I didn't keep it on this because it actually crashes servers. But at the top of Please Be Patient, you'll see there's a link, and the link says, basically this whole thing is under construction. Where is it? Boop, 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 boop. Wow, look at it go. Is that Pokemon? Pikachu was under construction. That's nice. Anyway, it says, if you have any questions, please click here to mail me. And then it hits you with 10,000 mail icons. And it crashes phones, and it crashes browsers, and so don't do it. Anyway, so I really hope that at the very least you'll keep that in your mind when you work at a place, that you say, like, the question is, where's the export function? We are long past the day when it was a shameful thing to have an export function because it was giving away the keys to the candy store. That's a bullshit, short-minded lawyer way of thinking. It's crap. If you're good, you have it. You export it, you're great. Awesome. Keep it with us or don't keep it with us. We're just going to be the best place to keep it. And the fact that whenever a place comes up now, there's a bunch of places now that come up, I will show up in their comments of their blog and be like, where's your export function? Seems like it's broken. Again, zealots are kind of a pain in the ass, but when it's like if you are going to really play with people's data, allow them to keep their data. That should be a basic functionality. And there's a group within Google called the Data Liberation Front, if you ever heard of them. They're uneven like everything else in Google, but the concept is there. And what they are is they're a group that says, come to us and we'll be your advocate at getting your data out of Google. So if you find something on Google where you want some data to take with you, let us know and we'll try to work with those engineers and try to get it out again. And it's got this real socialist, hammer and sickle thing, which is probably not the wisest goddamn thing to do, but okay. But the idea is there, and I hope that other companies build that up where they're just like, it's a feature and not a shame. So anyway, and all right, so basically that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for sitting through it. If I don't know what time we're at. If we have any questions, like why the fuck did you wear that shirt to a con? Yeah. Was there any questions or anything? Yes. I think that, I think it depends. Some places, what? Oh, sure. He's saying, it's great if I summarize it and I'm wrong, isn't it? But you're asking basically what my suggestions are for what kind of policy a place should have if they're going to shut down?
Yeah, 'cause you're saying the time period being like, oh, they did 9 days, they did this, they did 5 months. Like, what's your opinion in acceptable announcing it?
I think there should definitely be some consideration about how long you've been around. That should fall into the formula. If you've been around for 10 years, you give people 30 days, that assumes a lifestyle on the part of your users that already shows the amount of disconnect in your life that is why you failed in the first place. I think that if, for instance, you've been away for 10 years, I think, again, the fact that they could say, we've stored it in off-site backups, please contact us. They wouldn't get many people. They would just get a few, but it would be so worth it. I think at the very least, if you're going to go, I really think it should be at least 30 days for every year you've been up. I mean, I think so. I think if you can do it. Some of the places, like, I'm sure what happened with Meta Place was that Ralph Koster just ran out of money fast, hard, and quick, and said, what are we going to do? And the answer is shut it off for January 1st and be done with it. That was just, that's just incompetence. And I think an export function mitigates some of that. I think that if you have a client that interfaces with them, that there's no reason for the client not to keep a local copy of your data if it's so hard. I mean, one of the things we said at this point was we said, don't trust Yahoo for any data whatsoever. We're positive that somewhere within the next 5 years they're going to fuck up Flickr. We just know it. We're just waiting for it, right? We're just waiting for we fucked up Flickr. Look at they fired amazing people out of Flickr, including this wonderful woman named George Oates. And George was on a diplomatic mission for Yahoo, where she had just met the King of Thailand to convince them to store some of their photos on Flickr. And she goes back to her hotel room and finds out that she is fired and there's no way for her to be paid to come home. That is how they treat people at Yahoo. And all the people who I've met who are at Yahoo back in the good old days when money was flying out of everyone's ass doesn't like it when I talk negative about Yahoo. But I'm like, Yahoo fucking sucks. That company can eat shit and die as far as I'm concerned. They went and bought up all these properties. It's like some crazy coked up fuck buying up all of these museums and libraries, and then he's like, ah, shit, I'm out of money, boom, 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 and just sets it all on fire. That's what they're doing. And it reflects this unfortunate thing that does happen. I mean, it does happen. You buy up a bunch of shit, and then you forget, you're like, oh shit, I own a museum, what do I do? And you don't know what to do with it next. And that's what Yahoo is doing. I wouldn't trust them with everything I have up on them with Flickr. First of all, as weird as it sounds, I pay for everything. Like I pay for Flickr.